as we welcome our very special guest this morning, the Rev George Penk. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
We're good. Actually, are we allowed to have cookies and tea at the moment? Because, it is Lent, right? So,
Oh, true. Depends what you're giving up, though, isn't it?
You are obviously holier than I am because that did not occur to me. I'm like, oh, cookies.
It's interesting. I think a lot of pastors would struggle to give up caffeine if they were completely honest.
Yeah, very true.
I couldn't possibly comment on that.
Well, look, George, we'd love to get your thoughts on this one this morning because Lent as a season and as a part of the church calendar has so many dimensions to it. And what comes to mind for you when you first start to consider what Lent is all about?
Well, I guess at its heart, Lent is about preparation for Easter. It's a season of looking ahead to Easter and about preparing our hearts for that. And traditionally, it's been observed as a penitential season. And during these weeks, we remember our mortality, we remember our frailty, and we remember our need for forgiveness. And you might hear me say that and think, gosh, that's a bit depressing. But actually, I don't think it is. Yes, it's reasonably somber. It's quite reflective, but I don't think it's depressing. Actually, I think Lent is hopeful and it's beautiful because if the season of Lent is about preparing for Easter, well, let's think about those events of Easter. They remind us that sin does not have the final word. So at Easter, we are remembering what God through Christ has completed on our behalf. So if that's our focus, if that's what we've got in mind as we make our way through Lent, as we make this sort of Lenten journey, as we journey to the cross, if you like, actually, we are looking to the one who has defeated even death itself and has redeemed us from our sins. So it's not depressing. It's hopeful and it's beautiful.
That's really interesting because it comes down to the lens from which you observe things, right? Because I often think about this Lenten time and the time where technically or historically people give up something or make sacrifices as they do that. And I'm reminded of those moments between when Jesus died and the disciples were waiting for the resurrection, not knowing that would happen. And that would be a scary time. But the good news for us is that we know how the story ends, right? We have this great hope. It is a really hopeful time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you make. The whole giving something up, I'm certainly not anti that. I think it can be really helpful, and it is still probably the most sort of common way to observe Lent. But I think it's important to remember that, if we are giving something up, if we are denying ourselves in some way for these 40 days, actually we're still recognizing that God alone is truly faithful. And so I think that the point of doing Lent, of practicing these Lenten observances, actually, it's almost about being reminded of our inability to measure up and to tick all the boxes and to live a perfect life. And hey, that's why we need Jesus.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? This idea of sacrifice does tap into that more religious impulse that we all have to say, like, let's show how committed I am, how devoted I can be. Look at this really challenging thing that I am doing. And I think the gospel again and again brings that into stark relief about what our faith is truly based on, compared to a story of a people who for thousands of years said, yep, we'll keep the rules, we can do it, we can do all the sacrifices, we can make this happen on our own. So to kind of recognize that, I think really helps to draw out the meaning for us, especially as New Testament believers.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm certainly not anti-fasting. I think that can be really helpful, and you can do that through a New Testament lens, I believe. And if you're giving something up for Lent, it's basically a form of fasting, isn't it?
Sure.
And I think there is value in that. But I think it's about also remembering the big picture, if you like, and trying to hold that perspective. Actually, if we look at the cross and if we look at Christ's empty tomb, God has done this on our behalf already. So it's not about us measuring up. It's not about us all ticking all the boxes. Ultimately, at the end of the day, whether we're fasting or not, it's about putting our trust in him.
And I think it's also about our hearts, right? Because so many times in the Bible, Jesus talks about the condition of the heart and how the Pharisees and the Sadducees would do all these things and have these grand displays and these religious practices. But really what it comes down to is where it's all coming from. And I know in my own life, I'll be the first to put my hand up and go, there have been times where I've fasted and I've been like proud of myself and like giving myself a little pat on the back for keeping to it. And then other times where I've fasted and with the intention of using that time of eating to pray, but then I've been exhausted and ended up napping and just felt like a complete failure.
That's awesome. Well, as you say that, actually, I'm reminded of I'm not going to name names, but there was a previous duo on the Rhema Breakfast show a few years ago, and they were doing the whole Lent thing, and they were talking about what they were giving up, and oh, this is how my Lent fast is going. And thinking back, it sort of occurred to me, I think that's missing the point, because when Jesus says those things about not practicing your piety to be seen by others.
Yeah,
He talks about fasting in the Sermon on the Mount. He says, don't make a show of it. And so I don't know if I don't know if those people would do that again on the Rhema Breakfast show.
Well, look, I think it's been a great chat as well to get us focused on what Lent really is about, and remembering the condition of the heart. Hey, we really hope you enjoyed that video.
Make sure you like and subscribe and turn your notifications on.
And I hope you enjoy the next one.
Yeah, we'll catch you then.